San Francisco is now the first major U.S. city to ban the sale of new fur products.
My name is Robert Samec, and I'm a part of a team of 4 documentary filmmakers currently taking a look at the San Francisco fur ban. The fur ban is an amendment to the health codes of San Francisco proposed by Supervisor Katie Tang of the Sunset District. Before we get into the story of how the fur ban came to be, I want to set down a couple key points about what the fur ban is exactly. Number 1, the fur ban is an amendment to the health code of San Francisco banning the sale of any modern fur or any item which has fur in it. Number 2, the fur ban applies to any form of commerce in the city of San Francisco, whether that be in a big department store, in a small local business, or online. Number 3, the fur ban does not apply to the sale of used fur. And number 4, the fur ban will go into effect on the first day of 2019. Today, fur seems like a pretty outdated thing. When you're thinking about fur, most people are thinking about big fur coats in the 20th century, something that isn't really relevant today. And you also think about campaigns and protests led by organizations like PETA across the country in the 80s and 90s, which really seemed to shut down the fur industry. But the fact of the matter is that in the last decade or so, the fur industry has actually really made a big comeback.
To be honest with you, almost everybody's hip to fur now.
What we've really seen when it comes to fur and the resurgence of fur in the market is that a lot of people are wearing it in the form of a fur trim or maybe a hat or a keychain.
Since the 1990s, the fur industry has actually grown by 58%. This is largely driven by growing wealthy populations in countries like Russia and China, but it's really stimulating activity in the fur farming markets and the fur auction houses in Europe and North America. This is why when Katie Tang first proposed the idea of a fur ban, there was immediate support from animal rights groups, but there was also immediate opposition from local businesses in the Union Square area and other districts of San Francisco who saw this as a threat to their business. When we first started investigating the fur ban, it seemed like the amount of opposition from local businesses came as a surprise to City Hall.
When we were working on the legislation, we tried to research as many retailers in San Francisco that sold fur or potentially sold fur, and we tried the best that we could. Now, once the legislation was introduced, we found that there were a lot more of those.
When we were at the hearings, the main opposition was people who worked in stores that sell fur, as well as the Union Square Business Association.
And I think that there was one such business in San Francisco that, again, most of its business relied on that.
He's this guy. And I think he mainly cleans the fur garments. He also sells some, I guess. It's this one man. It's a family business. And he was going to be put out of business if we banned the sale of fur.
My name is Benny Lin. I'm furry. I'm a master furrier.
Pretty much everyone in this story knows who Benjamin Lin is, but ironically, when we talked to him, he felt like his voice was really not heard.
I have 4,000 or 5,000 customers. They very much depend on the facility here to upkeep the fur. Even if I have longer time to prepare, I could not. I have no time, no mood, energy, and money to fight those people. I can't take it anymore because they brainwash the people in general. There's a no fur ban. Not up to somebody to say, I will not allow you to wear fur. Period.
So it was a bit difficult to track the economic impact of the fur ban in San Francisco. Our chief economist, who's part of our controller's office here in San Francisco, used census data information and extrapolated that information to find that there might be an annual impact of about $10 million if this ban were to take effect. And the Chamber of Commerce conducted a survey on their own. They self-reported on the survey that maybe the impact to their industry would be about $40 million a year.
I have a problem with a lot of the ways in which numbers and dollar figures like that get reported because you never know how these studies or whatever are being conducted. I mean, even at the city level, you have to take these things with a grain of salt. What were your methodologies? What was your sample size? How did you arrive at these conclusions?
The fur industry itself, the national fur industry, sent representatives, wrote us letters saying that you must not do this because if you do this, it will cause so much economic problems. You lose so much, the city will lose so much money. There was so many jobs lost. which was really a lot of baloney because San Francisco was never a place where anybody needed fur coats in the first place.
The discrepancy between these two numbers actually became one of the main dividing points in this conversation. And while each side disputes the methods through which these numbers were estimated, the overarching theme is that this legislation was passed without a sound understanding of what the fur industry actually looked like in San Francisco. When we talked to Katie Tang, she really highlighted that this is a personal issue for her and that she saw this as an opportunity to elevate the ethos of San Francisco.
I wanted to be able to use my job and my legislative power to be able to help these animals.
Her, rationale for the ban, at least as far as I understand it, was she was just concerned that 50 million animals are raised every year to be killed for their fur.
We have found that sometimes passing legislation is the best way to really spark that debate. Sometimes people won't think about it until there's a law that's passed that might force them to change their behavior.
This is something that raised questions for us because there isn't a whole lot of fur business in her district, and fur also wasn't a political priority really of the people of San Francisco at the time. And while Katie Tang is an activist and a legislator, we really tried to understand what power she was using to define the beliefs of her constituents when usually it's the other way around.
The board is criticized for not being as audacious in the legislation that it wants to tackle in going after scooters and fur and straws, rather than trying to figure out how to build more affordable housing, which is a huge problem in San Francisco. So a lot of people don't think about these kind of issues when it comes to like animal welfare. It's not high on everybody's priorities.
When we got to where we are now, our biggest question was why. What were the reasons for passing this ban when San Francisco is dealing with a housing crisis, homelessness, intense gentrification, an immigration debate, and a drug problem? As a team, we could understand the political value of being able to say San Francisco is the largest city in the US to pass a ban on the sale of fur. But at the end of the day, this felt like accomplishing the minor goal of a few people as opposed to addressing the serious needs of a city. Now, we don't deny that this pushed forward animal rights. But watching the San Francisco Board of Supervisors battle over this legislation made us question whether or not the people of San Francisco have a government they can rely on to make the change that's necessary. And as we continue to debate the future of electric scooters and plastic straws, the chances of real change seem dim.